Hello, my name is Ray Stewart. I'm speaking to you from the studios of WOI-TV in Ames, Iowa. We'd like to tell you a story of Myrtilla Phones, a 10-year-old girl who lives in Des Moines, Iowa. When you think of a 10-year-old, what do you think of? Well, when I think of one, I think of a happy child. A girl who, even if she has been sick, is recovering and again will be among her sturdy, healthy little friends. I think of the things that make little girls shake with laughter and clap their hands with glee. But when I think again of Myrtilla, I think of polio. I remember that many children do not jump up and down and shake with laughter or clap their hands with glee. This is Myrtilla's mother, Mrs. W.H. Phones of Des Moines. And I believe that the best way to get a story about an illness of a little girl is to ask the little girl's mother. So, Mrs. Phones, I'd like to ask you first of all, how did you know that Myrtilla had polio?
Well, actually, she was ill for about 6 days before it was diagnosed. You know, polio has symptoms that are so very much like so many others. Her first symptoms, for instance, were an intense weariness and a dry throat. No fever even. But I put her to bed, and a day later she still had the sore throat, and she had a fever of 101. Well, I kept her down for a couple of days, and after 2 days her fever abated, and I let her get up for a little while on Friday afternoon, the third day of her illness. By that evening she had a very severe earache, and I was quite concerned, so I had the doctor look at it, and he found that she had a red ear and no fever, but he gave her some Benadryl and some nose drops, and that night she had a very severe vomiting attack, which frightened me nearly to death because she just choked so when she did it. So I had him check her again the next day. And
excuse me, but these symptoms that you're talking about sound like they could be symptoms for most anything.
They could be. They could actually be for something like measles or any of the numerous childhood diseases. Might even be a mild attack of flu. But on Sunday, when the doctor examined her, he noticed one thing that made him suspicious. She had a sort of double vision. And he couldn't find any stiffness, but he said if she were no better the next morning, she should go to the hospital and have a lumbar puncture. So that night she had an even worse vomiting attack than she had before, and I was really quite frightened and made arrangements immediately the next morning to take her down.
This lumbar puncture, what is that? Taking fluid out of the spinal column?
Well, as near as I can tell, it is a withdrawal of some spinal fluid, and in analysis of it, they discover the virus of the polio. So that is one sure way that you can tell that the polio is there.
And she then was diagnosed as having polio, is that right?
That's right. She was diagnosed as having polio, which was frightening enough in itself. But after the doctor listened to her rather peculiar hair-lip speech, he said that it was bulbar polio.
Now, before we go any farther into this thing, what other types could she have had?
Well, there are several types of polio. There is the spinal type in which the virus lodges in the spinal column, and it causes, as I understand it, paralysis of the limbs and sometimes the body. Then there is the spinal bulbar, which is a combination of the spinal and bulbar polio. Bulbar polio is where the virus lodges in the nerve centers of the brain, usually starts in the breathing and swallowing centers, and then moves out from there unless its progress arrests.
Bulbar, I believe, is supposed to be about the worst kind, isn't it?
Well, if a person recovers from bulbar polio, they recover almost completely. The danger of bulbar polio is that if the virus moves into, for instance, the circulatory center of the brain, it just means that the heart stops and the child dies.
There are more deaths then, probably, from bulbar.
That is the reason why there are more.
Now, after you got into there and they had diagnosed as that, did they put her in an iron lung or a respirator?
No, not at that time. They made a provision for this by having me sign a release for a tracheotomy in case that was necessary.
This is an operation that, what does it have to do with the iron lung?
Well, you see, in the bulbar, case of the bulbar polio, the air passages fill up with a mucus which must be suctioned off. And you cannot put a person with this mucus in their throat in an iron lung and have it drawn in and out. You have to make a bypass for the air to go in and out.
See, they can't swallow or clear their throat or anything, and so the mucus might strangle them.
That's right. You use a suction machine a great deal in bulbar in order to pull the mucus out of the nasal and throat passages. But if it gets down far enough where you can't reach it, then it's often necessary to do a tracheotomy so that the mucus can be removed by going through the tracheotomy incision.
Now, I think it would be well here to explain what this tracheotomy is. As we have explained, of course, the person is unable to swallow and has some difficulty in that manner. And so it is necessary to give them some mechanical aid to clearing the mucus out of their throat and so forth. The tracheotomy is a very delicate operation to perform, and although the operation itself is a very short one, it requires a great deal of time for preparation. Now, in this particular case, Myrtilla was placed in an iron lung. This is not usual, but Myrtilla was placed in an iron lung, which was wheeled into a small room, and the lung was not turned on. The large tray of instruments was placed in the doorway, and a suction machine and oxygen equipment were ready for use if needed. In this operation, the doctor cut into the windpipe and inserted a tube into it. Then the mucus, which collects in the windpipe from the bronchial tubes in the lungs, was suctioned out, and the air passages could be kept clear. Since Myrtilla's lungs were paralyzed, she herself could do nothing about clearing up this mucus, as we have explained, and so it all had to be done for her, and done instantly so that she could be able to breathe. A tracheotomy also allows oxygen mixtures to be fed directly into the windpipe. The tube which is inserted is a silver one, which is curved to fit the windpipe, and has an inner tube which can be removed for cleaning and for suctioning. There's a hollow T attached to this tube, through which mixtures of oxygen can be fed so that as much air is not necessary as might be otherwise, so they can keep the patient alive on almost, with large amounts of oxygen. Although really only a few minutes have passed until the operation is over and the lung was turned on, Myrtilla's waiting mother thought it was like an eternity. This was her daughter, who lay encased in an iron lung with a silver tube in her throat. Now, here was a daughter who was being kept alive by the mechanical means of our modern society. Speaking of mechanical means, I would like to continue here for a moment and bring in something that was not available to Myrtilla at the time she was in the hospital. That is a rocking bed. Now, a rocking bed is something that helps the patient to be out of the lung and aids them in breathing. I believe at this time it is only about a year old. I made a sound-on-film interview of one of the patients on a rocking bed, and I believe that's the best way to give you an idea of what it is.
I would like for you now to meet Mr. Harris Lee here, who is from Sally.
Harris, how old are you?
13.
You want to tell me what this contraption is you're on here?
The rocking bed.
The rocking bed. How does it work? What does it do for you?
It helps me breathe.
What do? You come out on this rocking bed after you're out of the lung, do you?
Yeah.
It helps you get out of the lung. How long are you out now?
About 7 hours on an average.
Well, how long have you been here, Harris?
11 weeks.
That's almost 3 months. You getting along pretty good, you think?
Yeah.
And over here is Mrs. Corney Terpstra, who is Harris' mother. Do you live on a farm out there near Sally?
Yes, we do.
Where is Sally exactly?
It's about 50 miles east of here.
Mm-hmm. Now, someone was telling me a very interesting thing about your farm out there, about how the neighbors were helping you when you had to bring Harris here.
Yes, they picked our corn for us, which we think is very nice.
What do you think about this rocking bed?
Well, I just think a lot of it. It has kept him out of the respirator longer, where otherwise he would have to be in.
He always has to be either on the rocking bed or in the respirator, does he? Or can he get off of the rocking bed sometimes?
Well, he gets off the rocking bed when he has his treatment, and usually on Friday afternoons they have movies upstairs, and he goes up there on a stretcher, which is about an hour.
So you can get off of this, too, in about an hour. Are you able to sit up very much, Harris?
Not too much.
How about your schoolwork and everything? Are you able to keep up here?
Well, I started a couple days ago.
Oh, you're back in school then. What grade are you at? Seventh grade. Is this a consolidated school that you go to?
It's just a country school.
A little country one-room school where you study. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, I have two brothers, no sisters.
Two brothers. Three people in the family then. Do you remember very much about when you were first coming in here?
Not very much.
What were the circumstances in which he came here? I mean, how did you find out that he had polio and so forth?
Well, he got us with a severe headache on Sunday morning, and he had a stiff neck, and his back was sore, and he called our doctor in Oxford, Dr. Patterson, and he had us take him up to the hospital there, and he checked him, and he diagnosed it as polio right away.
Well, then you moved in here.
Yes, on Monday morning he stayed in the hospital there, Sunday night, and then Monday morning they brought him here by the ambulance.
Well, how soon did you have to put him in a respirator?
Monday during the night, or he had oxygen during the night, Monday. And I think for 3 days he was in oxygen, and then he gradually got worse. Where in about 10 minutes they had to put him in the respirator.
It became necessary that fast.
Yes.
And if there hadn't been a respirator right handy, you might have lost it.
That's right.
Well, that would be very good for everybody concerned then. There's one thing about this bed that interests me very much, and I've noticed it all over the hospital. That is this footboard down here. What is the purpose of that?
Well, that is to keep the bottom of their feet straight, so when they are on their feet again, that they don't have the trouble of having their feet.
Well, I see. They have no control over his muscles there, and so his feet would just droop over
That's right.
if it wasn't for that.
Bed. He's well on his way to being cured of polio, and now comes the therapies and the things of restoring those muscles and so forth. The rocking bed has some therapeutic value, and then there's another thing that is used, which is known as hot packs. So I'll throw this question back over at Mrs. Phones here to tell me a little bit about the hot packs. I believe Myrtilla used them, did she not?
Yes, only after she was taken out of the lung. I think we'll learn more later about the value of hot packs in the earlier stages of the disease, but hers were used primarily to relieve stiffness and to get her so that she would be more pliable again.
This is something that I suppose we should give you a little bit of explanation of. It's used for both stiff muscles and some muscles that can be restored but have been inactive because of the disease. The same principle holds true in the treatment of polio. The application of moist heat to the muscles helps to keep them in good condition until some power returns. The pucks are boiled in intensely high heat and then are spun dry so that they retain their heat but won't burn the children. They are applied whenever muscles are stiff or useless. Hot baths do the same job of relaxing the muscles. This boy is in one of the hot baths. But to her, as to Myrtilla, no matter how well they may be progressing, it's still a hospital bed, and it's still not home, and they're still very sick children.
That's why it's such a wonderful feeling when the If you're one of the lucky ones, the day comes that the doctor says your child can go home. However, you must continue therapy treatments at home. So I had to go to school again. I had to go to a registered physical therapist and learn how to help Martilla regain the strength and utility of her muscles.
Thing's really tight.
Right over here?
Well, let me start in the back. This foot. You need to put your finger in the chest. Now spread your loin. Would you hold him here? That's strong. It still hurts her very good. You still can't get all the way down. She still hurts her quite a bit yet. You have to work on that at home. I think that's all we should. All right.
Involved in the treatment of a polio patient when he's on his way to recovery. There's so many developments in this field and things that a layman cannot answer that I have asked Dr. Lee Hill of Des Moines to come to the studio to answer some questions for you about polio. Dr. Hill, I don't know exactly where to start on asking questions about polio. Do you know very much about it, actually? I mean, are you able to treat it, the polio itself, I mean?
No, there is no specific drug for the treatment of polio, such as there is, for instance, for meningitis or pneumonia. There are some hopeful signs in the wind. Would you like me to talk
Yes,
about?
and I've heard lots of words like gamma globulin and that sort of thing.
Yes, gamma globulin certainly has some promise of doing good. However, I think a warning should be issued that it's not going to stop polio by any means.
Well, just what is this gamma globulin?
Well, gamma globulin is a portion of blood serum, and it's obtained from blood that is taken from, for instance, the people who donate their blood for the Korean soldiers. And some of that blood that may have run out is then used to process, and the serum part of it is saved, and the protein broken down, and gamma globulin is separated out. Now, gamma globulin is very useful in preventing measles. It does a grand job of modifying measles. In fact, we've used it for that purpose for a long time. But now it was shown at Sioux City and Houston and Provo last year in their experimental studies that gamma globulin also has a protective effect in polio. It lasts for only about a month, so that you can see in a whole season of polio that it's going to be very difficult to decide whether to give it once in the season or to give it 3 or 4 times. It's going to be impossible, it seems to me, to get enough to give to every child in the United States. We just couldn't do it. Now,
as I understand it, Dr. Hill, there are only going to be about 1,250,000 cc's available for the season next year, and that because of the shortage for the entire population, that it will have to be issued by the National Research Council as they see fit.
Well, I think it'll have to be controlled in some way. I dislike very much to be the person who had to decide whether this child or that child received the gamma globulin. But I'm sure it should be tried out and more learned about it. But I think, again, I want to repeat that I don't think people should feel that the answer has been found to the polio problem in gamma globulin.
That gamma globulin, then, is not something that if you have a polio epidemic in Des Moines or in Omaha, that they can fly in this thing and vaccinate all of the children there against it, is it? I mean...
Well, we could if that was the only area involved, perhaps. But supposing there are a number of areas involved, you're going to run out of gamma globulin, and the difficulty is going to be to get enough of it. So somebody's got to decide which ones of those children who are exposed are going to get it, and that's going to be difficult. Now, they are developing means, of course, of increasing the supplies of gamma globulin. I think one method now is a machine that will When the donor is giving his blood, we'll take out the red cells and or take out the serum rather, and save the red cells, then put the red cells back in, so that he can give his blood more frequently, perhaps.
Of course, though, the prime thing is we want to stop it. We don't want to just alleviate it.
That's right. And for that purpose, the real solution to polio is going to be a vaccine. And I personally feel, from what I know, that we're not too far away from the development of a vaccine that will be effective against polio. The fact now that the polio virus can be grown in the laboratory on tissue cultures has meant a tremendous advancement in research. Before we had to use monkeys, and that was time-consuming and expensive. But now I think that we're pretty close to an effective vaccine. The difficulty is that there are 3 strains of polio virus, as you know, and we have to have a vaccine for all of them if it's going to be effective. That will, of course, be the answer to polio, as it has been to diphtheria and to smallpox and to many of the other diseases at one time were probably just as dreadfully looked upon as we look upon polio today.
Well, I think of all of these vaccines and this gamma globulin and these things, and I see an awful lot of money involved. I talked to these patients in the hospital, and I saw people whose bills were approaching $5,000 for treatment. And then I think of the March of Dimes and that thing, and I wonder if Mrs. Phones might not be able to help me on that. You've been directly involved there.
Well, I have been directly involved. The National Foundation itself is a wonderful organization because it is a morale builder. Even if you don't need any help from them, you know that the equipment will be there when it's needed. The iron lung, Myrtilla's iron lung was flown in from North Carolina, Dr. Hill, just 2 days before she went into it. And the National Foundation, the chapters here in the state have spent over $12,000 this year bringing and transporting equipment in and around the state. And that's a lot of money just for trucking, not to say nothing of how much it costs. For instance, an iron lung costs over $1,800. That's 18,000 dimes. And that's why we want people to realize that this is a march of dimes and dollars, not just a march of dimes. The rocking bed costs 16,000 dimes. That's a lot of money, too. So I just feel that the National Foundation is doing a wonderful thing, not only in supplying equipment and recruiting personnel, therapists and nurses, and training of these therapists, but I feel that they are doing a wonderful thing in building the morale of the sick child's parents. And not only that, they are the ones who are sponsoring the grants, a large number of them, for the research facilities for discovering this vaccine.
It seems to me that it would be quite helpful, and maybe I can ask you about this. If you're faced with these great financial troubles, I'm speaking of a person now, isn't it a great help to you to have the Polio Foundation say, don't worry about it?
That's right. Even if you don't need it, you don't know, you might need it. Your child goes into the hospital. If they develop a serious case of spinal paralysis, where they have a long, serious treatment and are seriously involved. Their muscles need a great deal of therapy, and they're hospitalized. Maybe they have to have iron lung and oxygen for a long time. Then it's a wonderful thing to know that there's an organization that stands behind you ready to help in all the ways they can.
Well, there are so many things that figure into the treatment of polio. We've talked with Dr. Hill, and we've talked with Mrs. Phones, and we've looked into this thing. We can't possibly tell you everything about it. I'd like to leave you with this note, that 5 weeks after Myrtilla entered the hospital, she walked out of it. A little girl who had had the dread disease of polio and had conquered it. And so Myrtilla's story ended happily, and she was one of the lucky ones. But before we part, I'd like you to meet a boy who was in the hospital with Myrtilla, but who didn't walk out. With us in the studio is 18-year-old Jimmy Williams of Ames, Iowa. Now, Myrtilla's story actually happened about 3 years ago, and Jimmy was there, and he has been, as you will see him, since that time. We'd like to talk a little bit with Jimmy now. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
Pretty good.
I'd like to ask you a few questions, but first of all, did you live in Ames when you first went to the hospital?
Oh, I didn't. I lived in Rockwell City.
Oh, I see. Do you remember, were you very sick when you went in?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't very sick for about 3 or 4 days.
Oh, I see.
After I came in.
Uh-huh. And then you got sick in a hurry. You were in the lung, I believe, weren't
That's
you?
right.
How long were you in the lung? Do you remember?
Just about 4 months.
Mm-hmm. And then you've been out ever since?
That's right.
Uh-huh. And you moved from Rockwell City to Ames, and you live out there. I think I saw your picture in the paper not long ago where
That's right. Yeah.
they fixed you up with a mirror and that sort of thing so you can watch the boys playing out in the yard.
That's right. It's fixed so I can see out in the backyard there.
Uh-huh. So, well, how do you spend your time? I want to ask you about this thing here, too. I guess it all goes together.
That's right. This first switch here, I can operate my rodeo.
Uh-huh.
The next one, I can turn on the lamp on and off. This one isn't connected up, but this one here, I can move for my nurse.
You have a full-time nurse, then.
That's right.
You can move your 3 fingers here, can you?
That's right. Not very much. So.
Uh-huh. You listen to the radio, and what else?
That's right. I watch television quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. I suppose you watch just about everything we have on the air.
Just about. Then in the morning.
You have your favorite radio programs in the mornings?
That's right. Music mostly.
Uh-huh. You really have a nice thing there, then, to help you out.
That's right.
With your nurse and things, well, it looks like they've got you fixed up pretty good with your mirror and your window and so forth. Well, thank you very much, Jimmy.
Okay.
The story of Myrtilla and the story of Jimmy is made more haunting and more real because it has happened and is happening to many of us. Each year, there's more polio in America, and each year more children experience the same things that Myrtilla and Jimmy experienced. Each year it happens to someone else's child, and next year it could happen to yours. If ever a nation is faced with a grave and almost soul-shaking responsibility, we face it now. And our responsibility is to our children who are in our care.
Doorbell may be ringing now. Answer. Mother is waiting to talk to you. Talk to her. Talk to the thousands of mothers who are taking part in the Mother's March all over the country. And give every penny and every dime you can afford. Give to fight infantile paralysis and to give our children a chance. The special presentation of In Our Care was produced by WOI-TV, Ames, Iowa, as a public service program in the interests of the fight against infantile paralysis. The producer was Ray Stewart. Director was Lamar Smith. The script was written by Marjorie Abrams. Technical director was Don Haar. Cinematography was by John Raditz. The part of Myrtilla was played by Gene Hensing of Ames, Iowa.